Welcome all of you. I know all of you. I just wanted to say one more time, we appreciate you being here. This is such a great crowd, and you're going to make us a good meeting. Okay, so that being done.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Richard Baird, your district manager, and I wanted to just go over a few things. First of all, this is really our first step for the development of a solid waste management plan. A solid waste management plan is an integrated element of any local, county, or state government's provision of services. Within the district, solid waste recycling management and the related operations are big business, comprising nearly $10 million per year. This meeting, sponsored by the North Sumter County Utility Dependent District, is intended to be a first step to such a planning effort. Many of you are probably asking questions as to how and even if solid waste, curbside collection, recycling, frequency, and rates of charges may be impacted by such a planning initiative. While these are good questions and ones that will be addressed, they are matters to be addressed as we move forward with this planning effort and will not be addressed precipitously today. Issues of our environmental goals, financial considerations, population, specific demographics, waste generation, the projects that they will encompass, recycling rates, local and regional and national market forces, and available solid waste materials recovery, called MRF facilities, landfills, waste energy facilities are all elements in this complex planning process. Public participation is key, and we understand that many of you will not be able to attend all of the meetings. So the meetings and the information will be recorded, the presentations uploaded on our district government website, districtgov.org. This will be uploaded much like the stormwater and the advanced wastewater presentations earlier this year and last year. I anticipate that the planning effort and involved actions and scenario deliveries will involve intense public comment. And I really welcome that. I want you to know as your district manager and on behalf of the board, we welcome that. I just want to take a second and have the board members themselves, starting with our chairman, introduce themselves with the microphone.
Good morning. I am chairman of the NSCUD, and my name is Charlie Smith.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dominic Berardi. I'm the vice chairman of the board.
Matt Friedland, District 5.
Good morning. My name is Rick Rodemacher, Village of Lakeview.
Diane Spencer. I've been on NSCA for almost 10 years now.
So with that, I'd like to remind everyone that we're going to go through the presentation. After the presentation, we'll open up for board discussion. Sorry. And then we'll take some questions and provide some information to you, the residents. I did want to take a minute to introduce our speaker, John Wood. John Wood is the global technology leader for the solid waste management efforts and operations of Jacobs Engineering Corporation. For 30 years, he has been in this field of solid waste management. He has evaluated such programs in and around the state of Florida for Citrus County, Orange County, Alachua County, the combined Miami and Dade County, the city of Atlanta, and Collier County, Florida. Mr. Wood?
Thank you for the introduction. Get this mic set up here. Is that working? Is that good?
Yep.
Okay. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Trash is my life. That's what I do. But it touches everybody. Everybody everybody puts it out, and what, as Mr. Bear said, what we want to do today is get you some background information so that we're all on the same page. I know I have a tendency sometimes in the business to refer to acronyms, et cetera, so I'll try to explain those so as we go forward, we're all talking from the same page, we all understand what our current system is as we start to look at different options.
A little louder, please.
Is that better?
Yes.
A little bit better?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So what is a landfill? A landfill is the most basic form of waste disposal we have. Currently, our landfills are all engineered. We collect the leachate, we collect the liquid that goes through the landfill, we collect the gas, we collect the emissions from the landfill. So they're designed and operated to minimize the environmental impacts of disposal. Landfills are the most common form of disposal, and they're also the cheapest form of disposal in the United States right now. That facility there is the Orange County landfill. It's currently in operation, and that's cell 10, multiple cells that are built as the need arises. A transfer station. A transfer station is a facility where the collection trucks, the trucks that are out on the ground every day, they go to this facility and they dump their waste into transfer trailers or tractor trailers. The idea is to consolidate all of that waste into larger vehicles. That way it's more cost effective to transport that long distances. The inside of a transfer station looks like a warehouse. Big, open, high-span ceilings, dump the waste onto the floor, and then load it into the transfer trailers. A MRF, or Materials Recovery Facility. Materials Recovery Facility is a facility where the recyclables are taken and then sorted into their individual components. They are highly mechanized. We're using optical sorters, using magnets, using non-ferrous magnets, as well as it's a high degree of labor. It's not uncommon to have 50 people working on a MRF, picking through the material. If you think about it, when we send material through the recycling center, through the MRF, every piece of trash every piece of recyclable that goes in is touched, either mechanically or by hand. Most of what we're doing is positive picking, so as it moves down the belt, these workers are picking out just the #1 plastics. So it's very efficient, but it's also very costly. It's very costly because of the mechanical and the high labor requirements. Energy from waste, also known as waste to energy. This is where we take solid waste, we burn it, and we create electricity. This is a facility in West Palm Beach, Florida. One of the advantages, one of the benefits of waste to energy is that we significantly reduce the amount of landfill space. So we reduce landfill space, we create electricity at the same time, and that helps, that electricity is then sold back into the grid system. There are about 80 waste energy facilities in operation in the United States. There are 12 of them within Florida. Florida has the highest number of waste energy facilities in the U.S. Some other definitions, some other things that we'll touch on. Tip fee. Tip fee is what we pay when we go to a landfill. So that's the amount of money we pay for each ton. Usually it's measured in tons, sometimes in volume. But it's what we pay to get rid of trash, or it's what we pay at a MRF to have that material processed. Household assessment, that's the monthly fee that's charged to each of the households, each of the homeowners for the collection, the transportation, the processing, and the disposal of recyclables, solid waste, yard waste, and bulk waste. Single stream commingled recycling. That's what we currently have here in the villages. That's what we have in the villages in districts 1 through 11. So we have one bin, all of the recyclables are placed in that bin, and then the collection crew comes through and picks it up. Those commingled recyclables are then taken to a MRF where they're processed and separated. Other communities have a 2-bin system, or a 3-bin system, or a 4-bin system. The advantage of the single bin system is it reduces the number of trucks on the road, and it's a lot more efficient on the collection side. And then the last term is recycling rate. There's a lot of confusion when people talk about recycling and diversion. In the state of Florida, the recycling rate is calculated based on the amount of material we recycle, plus the energy value of the material that we send to a waste-to-energy facility, because we are deriving a benefit. So it's tons recycled, plus then there's a credit for the material that's used to create energy, and then that's divided by tons recycled, the total waste generated, the tons recycled and the tons disposed. Currently in Florida, we're about 54% recycling, and that's high compared to other states. Part of the reason is because we have those 12 waste-to-energy facilities. So in the U.S., we generate about 250 million tons of solid waste. 169 million tons of that wind up in landfills and incinerators. So the vast majority of our material is sent to landfills for disposal or incinerators. So specifically, what's it look like? Most recent published data for the U.S., our recycling rate was about 35%. So of all the waste generated in the United States, about 35% recycled. Within the state of Florida, the recycling rate is 54%. Like I said, one of the reasons that's high is because of our use of waste-to-energy facilities. We did an estimate for the villages, and looking at the villages, the amount of material that's recycled or sent to the Lake County Waste-to-Energy Facility, our recycling rate here is about 37%. Now, if you compare that to other jurisdictions, and this is what we'll do as we move forward in the plan, this is a pretty healthy recycling rate. We're doing more than, slightly more than the national average, but we're also looking at a very small community, a very discrete community. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about the current solid waste and recycling programs. For districts 1 through 11, that solid waste services are provided by North Sumter County Utility District. The district owns Sumter Sanitation, and then Sumter Sanitation contracts with Jacobs for the collection of solid waste. So this is just related for the collection of solid waste. South of 44, and including town of Lady Lake and the other districts, those services are provided by Waste Management. Waste Management, Inc. either contracts with some of the cities, Wildwood, Lady Lake, or directly with the homeowners. So what we're really talking about today is mostly going to be focused on the District 10 through 11 as it relates to collection. So within the villages, solid waste is collected twice a week. On the days we collect waste, we collect about 100 tons per day. So each day we're out there, we're collecting about 100 tons. Recyclables are collected once a week. We collect about each household is collected once a week. And we collect about 55 tons of recyclables each collection day. Yard waste is collected once a week. It's collected on Wednesdays, and that's about 125 tons per day of yard waste. Bulk waste is on a call-in system, and call in, make an appointment, and we come out and pick that up on a regular basis. The monthly assessment is $17.90 per household for these services. So where does all this go? So, like I said, we collect the waste. We collect the waste, recyclables, yard waste, and bulk waste, and we take it to Waste Management's Wildwood transfer station. So we have separate trucks, one for each waste stream. We go to the transfer station and dump it at the transfer station. ENSCA pays $28.35 per ton of material that's dumped at the site. Now, the solid waste and bulk waste is transferred to Chester Island Road Landfill in Georgia, just north of Jacksonville. The recyclables are rough sorted and shipped to various locations in Tampa. And the yard waste goes to Lake County, where it's burned in waste energy facility. So what does this look like graphically? So in front of the house, you put out your different bags, solid waste in a black bag or white bag. I just show a black bag there. Recyclables in your clear bag, and yard waste you bundle or in a paper bag system. Material is collected, it goes to the MRF. From there, it either goes to the landfill, it's collected and goes to the transfer station. And from there, the solid waste is consolidated into tractor trailers and sent either to the landfill, the recyclables go to the MRF, and then the yard waste goes to the energy from waste facility. So as you can see, we're touching this material many times. We touch it when we pick it up, we dump it at a transfer station, it's moved, pushed, sorted, and then shipped off for disposal. One of the things we wanted to do was a quick survey. What are other jurisdictions doing for solid waste? So these were several surrounding counties, cities, and so we have the jurisdictions across the top, the villages, and again, districts 1 through 11. And then on the rows are the services that are provided. So within the villages, we collect waste 2 times a week, once a week recycling, once a week yard waste, and on-call system for bulk waste. The annual assessment is $214.80. If we compare that to other jurisdictions, so the first 5 have twice a week collection. So Collier County, Ormond Beach, Naples, and Apopka, they all have twice a week collection. Now Apopka only has recycling every 2 weeks. And some of the other jurisdictions, instead of having a call-in system for bulk waste, you put your bulk waste out on one specific day, and that's collected through a route system as opposed to a call-in basis. But if you look at the cost, the villages is comparable to those other programs. The last 5 jurisdictions have once a week waste collection. Now I'd like to point out with Lake County, depending on the district and the service, you can either do once a week collection or twice a week collection. So the $188 in Lake County would be once a week collection, and the $251 is twice a week collection. And again, you see the costs are similar, in some cases it's a little bit higher even with Ocala, but they're similar or slightly less than what we're paying here in the villages because they have less services than we have here in the villages. So overall, the villages is comparable. Their household assessment is comparable to other jurisdictions. One of the things I'd like to talk about now is what's happening in the industry. There's a lot going on with solid waste and recycling. It's been in the newspaper. There's been a lot of press about the difficulty in marketing recyclables. So I sort of wanted to touch on a couple items. When I put the slide together, when it comes up, it's a little awkward. It's not pretty, and that's sort of where we are right now. We have a lot of things happening against us, if you will. China has banned the import of recyclables. The market, the value of recyclables is down significantly. There are only so many landfills. There's less than 1 landfill per county here within the state. We have aging infrastructure. Many of the transfer stations that were built are getting old. Many of the MRFs are getting old. They're getting old, but they're also getting old because the waste stream is changing. We're seeing market prices drop. And then there's just a general environmental concern. We're becoming more aware of the impact we have on the planet, and we're trying to do the right thing. So like I said, when I first pulled the slide together, I thought it was a little bit awkward, not pretty, but I didn't change it because it's sort of how we are today. So let's talk what's happening. So globally, the China and many of the Asian countries have placed restrictions on importing recyclable material. As a result, that's greatly impacted the price and how we manage our recyclables. They've enacted regulations that limit the amount of contamination to less than 0.5% of 1%. It was not uncommon for us to be sending recyclables to China that consisted of 20% or 30% contamination. So that has been one of the big drivers, and that started about 5 years ago. So we were sending our material there. 2016, China was taking about 55% of the world's market. So 55% of all recyclables, 55% of all the paper and plastics were being sent to China. Now, total of about 7.5 million tons of material. Now, if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, that's baled cardboard that was shipped to market. What was happening, and you can see, so this is supposed to be old corrugated cardboard. It's supposed to be brown. All the white is contamination. All the blue is contamination, mostly plastics. So what was happening is we would ship a bale to a paper mill in China, and they would have to sort it because they can't put plastics into the cardboard process. They would sort through and have 20%, 30% contamination. Then that plastic would wind up being disposed of in China. Now, some of it was disposed of properly, some of it wasn't being disposed of properly. So that is one of the big drivers, has been this high degree of contamination that we were sending to China, and they said, no, we're not going to do this anymore. So why were we doing it? It was cheap, low labor cost. China's market was hot at the time, and they were willing to pay the higher prices because they needed the cardboard for packaging. And they're only in the domestic markets. Many of our paper mills have closed. Just look in Florida. Many of the paper mills in Florida have closed over the last 10 years. So how did all this occur? What was the timeline? In 2013, Chinese customs started to inspect loads and really look at importer practices. What they were finding is illegal importers, people who weren't licensed to import waste, smuggling. People were smuggling plastics in. But part of it was they didn't have to go through a license fee. They didn't have to go through a permitting process. So we began to see that impacting the market in 2013. In 2017, China announced that they were putting restrictions on 24 different recyclable materials. And that began in 2018. So in 2018, January of 2018, the Chinese government came out and banned mixed paper and scrap plastics. So that 7.5 million tons that was generated in the world had nowhere to go. Shortly after, they said, okay, we'll be willing to accept the material if it has less than 0.5% contamination. Now, in order to do that, you actually have to have material inspected here in the U.S. There are certain firms, actually there was one firm, that was licensed to do the inspections here in the U.S. before you ship your materials overseas. We changed our MRFs, we tried to improve them, get the contamination level down. But then in May, even recyclables that were meeting that level, less than 0.5%, were still being rejected at the docks in China. So this has had a major impact on the market value and where material goes. This is a graph of scrap plastic. So this is baled scrap plastic. So all plastics combined, not sorted, and the amount of material that we exported, the U.S. exported to China. So the green bars show the U.S. was exporting about 2.5 million tons of material, and in 2018 it was less than 100,000 tons. The line shows the value, the value of scrap plastics, dollars per ton, for mixed plastics in the southeast region. So Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. This is what the value was. If you had a bale of scrap plastic, this is what you could sell it for. It was selling for about $150 per ton. Currently, it's selling for about $40 per ton. So the revenue has decreased by 2/3. Now that's just the revenue. That doesn't include the cost to process that material. So we have to spend the time and the money to process the material and then sell it for $40 per ton. So how are we responding? How is the nation responding? A couple things have been occurring. We've slowed down the sorting lines at the MRFs and improved the sorting. We've spent money. There's a MRF that just opened in Tampa, and they are actually using a robot to sort the recyclables. There are about 75 or 80 robots at recycling centers to sort the material. They're very efficient. They can sort, they touch about 80 objects a minute. So they're moving more than one piece of material every second. But slowing the recycling lines down, adding this equipment, it's costing money. Communities are changing how they collect recyclables. They're removing some of the materials from the program. I live in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. We had a very aggressive recycling program. We had 12 materials that I could put out in a commingled bin. They've changed that. I can only put out 5 materials now. So your number 1 and number 2, your plastics, but they have to be bottles. They can't be kitchenware or pool whip tubs. I can do cardboard, I can do glass, and I can do metal. I can't do newspaper. So, one of the things that we've always done, now I can no longer recycle. I mean, I'll be honest, it's killing me. My 2 kids are in college, so it's just my wife and I. And there were weeks where my recycling bin had more recyclables in it than I had in the trash can. Now, my recycling bin doesn't have that much in it. When I take out we get the paper, probably some of us still get the paper. When I take the paper out and I take out the other materials, I can't recycle cereal boxes anymore, so the box board. I can only recycle corrugated cardboard. So, but this is common. This is happening across the U.S. Other communities have banned specific materials. You'll hear people, well, let's ban plastic bags. Now, I understand plastic bags are a bit of a litter issue. But most of those plastic bags, the plastic bags in our house get reused. We have a cat for the cat litter. You just use them again. But some jurisdictions are looking to ban specific materials. One of the challenges with plastic bags is they're very hard to separate when they go into a MRF. They get tangled in all the equipment. So you've got all these rotating belts, all these rotating screens. The plastic bags get wrapped around there. So it's very difficult to handle at a recycling center. Some communities are switching from single stream to bin. Many of the recycling programs that started either had a dual stream system where you had containers in one and fiber or paper in another. The advantage of that is you don't contaminate your paper and your cardboard. You keep it clean because your glass and any liquids that are in your containers. But we've switched over as an industry to single stream, and that's, again, villages, districts 1 through 11, that's what we have here. So we're seeing some people invest in and move back to a dual stream or a 3-bin system. And some communities have been forced to landfill their recyclables. The city of Philadelphia has been landfilling about half of their recyclables. Clearwater has been sending some of their recyclables to the waste energy facility simply because there's been no market or the cost to have the process is so high. So what's happening in Florida? The market has impacted water recycling programs. We're seeing that here, we're seeing it throughout the state. I'll touch on the second bullet. There are programs here in the state that have changed significantly. The other thing we're seeing are higher costs. So we've got increased labor rates at the MRFs. We've got increased hauling costs because we're moving this material to other facilities in order to get it processed. And the cost of recycling is increasing. It is more expensive than landfilling or waste to energy when you look at it as a tipping fee. So what's happening, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but I subscribe to a tipping service. And I went through and I sort of, just as a snapshot, as a survey, what's happening, what's typical, and how, what's happening within the state, how the program's changing. And this is typical for Florida, it's typical for the U.S. So just looking at some of the items I bolded, cost to recycle will double, charge $360,000 because of contamination, 20% rate increase. Lake Worth was looking to switch to dual stream, so they went from the single stream system back to a two-bin system. Clearwater sent about a third of its recyclables to the waste energy facility. Santa Rosa County doubling the processing cost. Some have suspended recycling. Walton Bay County, Sunrise. DeBarry looked to suspend it. It would have cost about $30,000. DeBarry is a smaller city. So public services is seeing 25% inbound contamination. And that's pretty typical. Throughout the state, throughout the U.S., we have about 25% contamination in our recycling bin. We did a quick look at what's in the village's waste stream, and it's probably about 25%. We looked at some of the bags, we looked at what was in there. So what we're putting out here, a high percentage of that is contamination. And it's not being recycled. That has to be sorted out and then sent to our landfill. Again, Orland Beach, the city looked to remove glass. Glass is wonderful. It's heavy. It really helps the recycling rate calculation, but it has very little value. And then, Polk County looking at eliminating glass, magazines, and certain plastics from their recycling program. So this is happening across the state. It's a change we all have to deal with. So what's happening in Florida? FDEP launched a program to address contamination. They called it, the 3 R's: reduce, recycle, recover. Well, theirs was rethink, reset, recycle. So they've launched an educational campaign. Other jurisdictions are investing in the education. Lakeland, Indian River County, and Orange County are all spending money reaching out to the residents and helping them improve what's put into the recycling bins. So what impact does this have on the villages? Like I showed earlier, the villages offers a high level of solid waste services, and the cost is competitive to other jurisdictions. Put the waste out, it's picked up every day. The current contract that the district has for disposal is expiring. So the contract that they have with Waste Management at the Wildwood facility is expiring, and the cost to recycle is anticipated to increase. Right now, we're paying $28.35 to deposit the recyclables there for further processing. We expect that to increase. So the district's considering options on what are the future programs, what should we be doing. And like Mr. Brown said earlier, this is the first step. Let's talk about the background, come to a common understanding of what services we provide, what's the market we're operating in, what's happening out there, and then let's start a planning process to move forward. So key takeaways so far. Contamination is a major problem. We've avoided it for decades. We sent 30 bales of cardboard, 30 bales of plastics, 30 bales of paper, we sent it overseas. China said enough's enough. And that's caused disruption in the recycling market. It is impacting us locally, and the villages need to do something. We can't keep doing, what we're doing now is not sustainable. So we need to do something, either adjust the solid waste program, adjust the recycling program, adjust the assessment in order to respond to what has been changed. So we've talked about a solid waste plan. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time. What do we mean when we say solid waste plan? So a solid waste plan, it's a written document, and it's a roadmap of where we're going, but it's really a process. So it's a process of working with the community, working with the district, and understanding how much waste do we generate, how much recyclables do we generate, what do we generate, and what are the options to get rid of it. Part of it is going to be identifying what's the path forward, and then use that information to identify the budget so that the district can plan long-term budget planning of what the program would look like. So what type of questions would we be answering? What changes? So we would look at what changes would be needed to make the program more cost-effective. Are there changes to the collection program? Are there changes to where we take the material that should be more cost-effective? Can we recycle more waste? Yes, we can. When we looked at those values in Florida, it was $200 to $250 per household. That's low compared to other areas. People talk about Austin, Texas, Toronto, Canada, San Francisco. They have zero waste programs. They're recycling 50%, 70% of their waste. But their cost is much higher. Here, you're at $250, $218. Austin is about $400 per household. Toronto is about $600 per household. And San Francisco, which is the model, everyone talks about San Francisco, they have zero waste laws. They pay over $1,000 per year for their solid waste program. So there's a spectrum of what we can do. You can send it all to the landfill or the waste energy facility, or you can be extremely aggressive and set a goal of zero waste or 80% diversion, but that's going to cost you more because right now recycling is more expensive than disposal. How do we remain flexible? We don't want to lock ourselves in. We need to have a flexible program. Glass, right now, glass is negative value. You have to pay sometimes to get glass taken away from the MRF. So, but that's going to change. Cardboard was up high, cardboard has dropped, but cardboard's rebounding again. We're seeing new mills being built, new paper mills being built in the U.S. to take in some of this material. So we want to have a program that's flexible and not commit to this is what we will do and not change it, but we want to have a flexible collection program and a flexible contract to send that material to MRFs that reflect the market conditions so that we can adjust the program so that we are cost effective. What alternatives are available? I'll talk about that in the next slide. But if we're looking at landfills and waste energy, what else is out there? What are the overall environmental impacts? There are great environmental benefits to recycling. If we recycle, we don't have to dig up ore somewhere else. We don't have to process that ore from South Africa. We don't just transport bauxite from South Africa to South America, where it's processed into aluminum and then ship the aluminum from South America to the U.S. By recycling, we don't have to do that, and that's a huge environmental impact. Same with waste energy. We send the material to a waste energy plant. There is a benefit in that material, we're recovering the carbon, we're burning it, but recovering that carbon and generating power. And lastly, what does this mean? How much is this going to cost? Um, So the decisions that are made, what are the goals, what are the decisions made, and what do we want to be doing? There's a cost to that, and it's a sliding scale. It depends on the level of service that we desire moving forward. So, potential solid waste facilities. This is just a quick plot of some of the landfills and some of the energy from waste facilities here in Central Florida. The purple dots being landfills, the orange dots being energy from waste, and we're located there at the intersection of, just off the intersection of Turnpike 75 there. So there are some choices around. Many of the energy from waste facilities, they're beginning to reach capacity. So yeah, they may not have, they have a fixed capacity. They burn 1,000 tons per day, and if they're already full, they may not be able to take additional waste. Landfills are a little more flexible. So recommendations, path forward, what you should be looking for. Move forward, preparing a solid waste plan, and look at what options to manage materials. The other thing we need to do is continue to anticipate growth in the villages. The villages are growing. We have more residents need more trash. And develop goals and guiding principles for the program. Right now, solid waste is really, it's regulated at the county level, if you will. Most of the counties have a solid waste plan, but that tends to be high-level strategy, what we want to do, but it doesn't address operationally what you do here in the villages, for example. So part of it will be developing goals and guiding principles for the program. And last, identify budget requirements that reflect the current market conditions and the level of service that's desired. You don't want to do this in a vacuum. This is a public process, but we want to understand what everyone wants to do, would be willing to support, and adjust that program if it changes. And that may be changing the collection program, changing the materials that we put in the recycling bin. Maybe we don't do glass, for example. Maybe we don't do mixed plastics. So that's just some of the things that we'd have to look at. So thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Like I said,
Thank you, Mr. Wood. I'd invite the board members back up to the front dais. I wanted to let you all know that this is, of course, a big and important topic, and from your turnout today, I can see it resonates with many of you. I would like to ask our BCDD board supervisors to stand, if you would, and be recognized, those that are here. I see, come on, Peter, Tom, Stan, Ken, there we go, don't be shy. These people also are giving up their time, although not specifically under their purview, that it demonstrates the commitment to excellence that they are demonstrating for the local government. Thank you. I did want to also just make a note in that what you've heard today, because I'm sure I'll get a million emails, and my staff, that people will say, I hear we're eliminating glass. We're not saying that. I hear that we're eliminating cardboard. I hear that the rate's going to go up to, what, San Francisco. We're not saying that. What this is meant to be is that first step where you all participate with the district government and with your NSCUD board and with the county and other stakeholders in developing a long-range transportation plan. So we have several critical factors facing us. You've heard what they are relating to global, national, and statewide market changes. You've also heard that we have a number of opportunities as we have some contracts that are expiring. But that also prevents us from really, well, it should prevent us from just taking a step in sort of a rote manner. And so we want to think it through. We want to make sure that the actions of the board that we would recommend and the board consider are really reflective of what the current and the forward kind of thoughts are in going forward with a planning effort. And I just wanted to ask the board if you had any comments you wanted to perhaps make prior to taking public comment from the residents that are in attendance.
digest.
And did you have, Mr.? There you go.
Okay, I just want to say publicly, although I'm new to the NSCUD board, I've quickly come to respect the knowledge and dedication of the district staff that works with the board. I'm talking about Richard Bear, Ken Blocker, and many other staff people who work tirelessly to make the district government team work as effectively as possible. I think today's first step towards a long-range solid management plan is an example of how the staff puts extra effort into working to helping us understand how things work and the issues that we face in the future. Please be assured that the NSCUD board members work with staff to develop plans to implement the best possible solutions to the tough issues, we've learned that today, that we face every day. Well, we ask many questions at board meetings and open and frank discussions. We are appreciative of the public's, your attendance here this morning, and always solicit your questions, as Richard mentioned, and comments to add to ours. Only by district staff, NSCUD board members, Jacobs, and the public working together can a local impact be made on recycling, waste management issues we all face. And again, I want to thank you all for your attendance here today.
Thank you. Mr. Friedland?
We're going to open it up for questions from the audience.
Yes, sir. Were there any more comments? Mr. Chairman? Okay, if you would, because we have a camera here, which is appreciated that you're covering this, if you could come down the center aisle, I've turned this podium so that you can address the board. If you have comments, it'd be easiest for you guys to go first if you want to jump on. So, we would like to receive your comments, and as we move forward, bear in mind that we're going to record the comments, also this presentation, and the recording of it will be placed on the districtgov.org website. So, Mr. Lipsey, Supervisor Lipsey, did you have some comments? Did you want to come over to the microphone so everyone can hear you?
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. My name is Brian Lipsey. I live in the village of Alhambra. And actually, I have three questions this morning. First of all, we started the presentation with some percentages. If my notes are correct, the U.S. is at 35% recycling. Florida is at 37%. I forget where. I'm sorry, the villages is at 37%. I forget where the U.S. is. But what I was wondering is how does Florida or the villages compare with other countries? Question one. Question number two. Many times in the presentation, you made it very clear you were dealing with districts 1 through 11. What happened to District 12, Village Center, Sumter Landing, and all the areas under construction that don't have a number yet? Third question. I think you said the front tipping fee was $28.35 a ton, and that expires soon. And we expect it to increase, which says we have some sense of urgency to get something done. Nobody said when is our drop dead date. When do we have to get it done? Those are the three questions.
So, Mr. Lipsey, they are very good questions. So the first is dealing with, of course, the district government provides services, and for those of you that have been through a plug for our resident academy, you know where those services come from. For districts 1 through 11, they actually are dealing with contractual issues that we are in the majority way referring to. The Lady Lake area of Lake County under VCCDD, and also separately by a separate contract, Waste Management provides services also to District 12. There are no houses, of course, as you might know, but coming in District 13 down just south and east of Fenny. So This presentation is really geared toward those areas because those areas are under the purview of the district government. The outside waste management contract of District 12 is really not under the purview, under our direct purview. We can go ahead and we can provide some input to them, but that they have a totally separate integrated waste stream to the waste to energy facility, or what's now energy from waste, and they do not have a separate recycling program. The contract, actually, we're entering a month-to-month phase with regard to waste management, with regard to the recyclables, and so that discussion is ongoing with staff. We are going to bring that to the board. There is no sort of the services will end, but there very much is a tenor set forward by waste management that the service fee for the fee for service will increase. To what extent, we'll bring that to the board. We have not finished that initial discussion and negotiation yet. And perhaps the global comparison you can handle, Mr. Wood.
Right, so what are other countries doing? The US is about 35%, like you stated. If you look at other countries, Canada is slightly less than us. Mexico is much lower. Canada is probably around 25%. Mexico is much lower. If you look at European countries, they're much higher. They're around 50% to 70%. But what they do is they tax all of their landfills. So if a landfill, $28, because that's where our waste is going, there, in some European countries, there's a $50 tax on that landfill. So that $28 now became $78. And what they do is they take that money and they invest it into their recycling programs. So what we've seen in Europe has been a subsidy through a landfill tax that supports recycling. If you look at, I mean, really it's the recycling rate is very much dependent on the economy of the country. China is very low. Southeast Asia is very low in some locations, but others, Singapore, Malaysia, those are very high because they have limited land space. Hong Kong is very high. They have limited land space, so they've enacted or they've implemented waste energy facilities, or they have implemented aggressive recycling programs. So I would say it ranges from, developing countries, low economies, non-existent, to Europe is probably the leader, but they funded that through a tax, a landfill surcharge that is diverted to pay for the recycling programs. So I would say some countries are in the 50, 60, 70% level, but that's mostly European and some Asian countries.
Thank you all both for your answers.
Would you like to go first? Good morning, and thank you all, board members, and Jacob, presentation. That's all right. Can you hear me now? You had talked about the tipping fee of $28.35 a ton for recyclables. What is it for mixed municipal waste? Same, and green waste? Okay. It's incredibly low, in my opinion, based on where I came from. We were paying twice that, and that was 12, 15 years ago. And you talked about the recycling rates in terms of a percentage of tonnage. You didn't touch on participation rates. Is that some figures that you have available? Are you aware of what those might be in terms of a range or a percentage?
So we have the tonnage figures by day, by week, by month, but we don't have individual rooftop participation rates now.
I'm wondering how much of an impact that might have on the actual recycling rate. If the participation rates climb, you can see a great deal more tonnage being diverted. In the areas that I look at for consideration, cost avoidance, composting, that wasn't mentioned. You're dealing with your green waste and the waste to energy form as composting.
an issue, a problem, or is it at all utilized in Central Florida to any extent?
So some jurisdictions, having run Clearwater system for a number of years, and also up in the DC area, Alexander, Virginia has a very large system. In some areas of Florida specifically, composting is a component of their solid waste management plan and system. The issue that we need to be considerate of with composting, of course, is the issue that we look to in the villages with the number one sort of I, which you know is aesthetics. And so if we look at your deed restrictions and covenants, as I have in my own living in the villages, we need to be mindful that in some areas there would have to be restrictions on where you could actually place something, if at all, outside. So that would actually be an issue that we would have to address in consideration of the deed restrictions as well. But it is a very important thing. There's also a number of programs that can be considered relating to food waste. Food waste and collection of food waste for use as a centralized composting is another element of solid waste management that urbanized areas such as in the DC and Alexander, Virginia area utilize. So that's a big part of what can be utilized.
And I was thinking in composting, not so much at an individual level, but more something in a commercial size.
Right. And there's various ways you could do it. You're right.
Correct. There's either backyard composting or there's taking it to a central facility. And again, we're looking at in Florida, you have a lot of vegetative waste. There's a lot of chipping and composting operations that are in operation. And then on participation, we don't have the numbers on participation here in the villages. What I've seen nationally, maybe 50% is a normal, typical program. Some communities get as high as 80%, but that's a very aggressive program. Part of it also depends, and yet we have to be careful with recycling, because I know I do it now. I don't put my recyclables out every week, because I only can put out 5 of them, and it doesn't fill up that quick. So I participate every day, but I only put my bin out every 2 weeks sometimes. So when you hear people talk about participation rate, you have to look at how they're participating and what they're actually setting out.
Right.
That's a good point.
And is your program mandatory or is it optional?
Correct.
There's a number of factors
Yep.
involved. I happen to come from a community that mandatory. Our participation rates were in the 95+% range, but there was enforcement that went along with that. And that's a whole other topic for discussion.
And I also look at 95% participation rate is peer driven, and I've seen people put out empty bins just so their neighbors think they participate.
There's all kinds of games that go on out there. The only other item I'd like to mention is just in terms of collection options as a way to reduce cost or control costs, maybe not reduce necessarily. But, I came from a community that utilized a trailer on the back of the garbage truck, so that when they went down the street, when they got to the end of the street, they were done. They weren't coming back with another vehicle later on for recyclables. The recyclables went in the trailer, the mixed municipal waste went into the packer truck. That's just an option. I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of others.
So collection, the whole collection system as part of the plan will be reviewed insofar as type of collection, number of collections per week, things collected, methodology for collection. You're right, that is a big part of a planning effort. And something that from many of you may be thinking is time to be reviewed. And we have begun that from a staff perspective, comparing the tonnage from the first and second day of the solid waste collection and looking at methodologies in advance of the study, just to make sure that we're doing our due diligence insofar as the contract itself.
Thank you.
My name is this working? My name is Bernard Gunther, Village of Largo. First of all, I want to congratulate Mr. Wood for his excellent presentation. And also the villages for taking this very forward-looking approach to solid waste planning. If you'll indulge me a couple of minutes and give you a little bit of history of what happened in the state of New Jersey where I come from. This goes back 35 years. I know that's before a lot of you were born, but I got very much involved when the state mandated that every county account for its solid waste. And they would not approve any more landfill. And this is the problem that I see here. For example, we're taking the solid waste up to Georgia. There will come a time when the state of Georgia, or that county, or that municipality will say, no mas. We don't want any more of your waste. And that's going to happen here in the state of Florida, where the increasing population, especially in the villages, because the developer's so intent on developing every single acre he's got, that you're not, for example, we can't do backyard composting, right? That's feeder searching. So you're going to run into that, I don't know when, but somewhere down the line. And that's why I congratulate you on taking a very forward-looking approach to try to offset that. That will come somewhere down the line, probably when I'm not around anymore. And one of the key issues of your presentation was, and I've mentioned this to Mr. Bayer before at a meeting, is that I find the education level here in the villages regarding the recycling is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Lacking. The developer owns a newspaper. You could easily get together with it, they have like a weekly little column or a little blurb on hints on how to recycle. The contamination level here is very high. I walk around my neighborhood, I do a walk almost every day, and the night that they put it out for recycling, I see people with a jar of mayonnaise, still half full, with a cap on it. There's an education process. Wash it out. Separate the cap, because a lot of times the cap, as my daughter was an environmental engineer, told me that the recycling, the commingled facilities cannot handle the small caps. They will get caught in the machinery and block it up. There are also, regarding plastics, I saw a documentary about a firm in New Jersey that has developed a technology. They were so overloaded he ran a recycling center. They were so overloaded with plastic that they developed a technology for actually cleaning that plastic out and converting it to the pellets that are used for manufacturing. So I think there are evolving technologies that you should take into consideration when you develop this plan. And as I think I hinted at before, is the cost of recycling versus landfill. Now, I understand we're all very conscious of cost. Why is San Francisco's cost so high? Well, yeah, they probably can't get a landfill anywhere near them that doesn't have prohibitive cost of transportation. So they were forced into this kind of a program, and obviously the rates are going to go up. And the more, as I said, it's more dense the population gets in Florida, that's going to be faced at some time down the future. And I think you have this under consideration. The environmental responsibility that we have to the future as to what we do. I understand the market with China, and I think we relied on the Chinese to solve a problem, but we have to confront our own problem. And then it filters not just down from a national level, but to a state level, to a county level, to a local level. And that's why it's so great that you guys are really focusing on that. I just want one more comment on waste to energy. When I got involved on the citizens group to stop the state of New Jersey from building those facilities, because it's the most densely populated state in the country, there are issues there with air contamination, and, okay, I know you're going to tell me the scrubbers, right? The scrubbers, well, you got to scrub it down, and guess where it winds up? In ash. And if you put in plastic has a very high BTU value, but it also has a lot of contaminants when it's some nasty stuff that's in the manufacture of plastics that settles down in the ash, and that ash still must be landfill. Now, where are you going to take it? So that's something to consider. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jackie Latzer. I live in the village of Gilchrist. I want to thank you all very much. This has been informative, and the ability to hear what's going on, we appreciate that. I didn't come with prepared questions, but I do have a serious concern. It's been touched on, but I ask, as you do the planning, I understand costs are important, but we have to appreciate, we need to also consider the environmental impact of our decisions. And we know we've all lived wonderful lives because we got to live here. We can live here. But one of the major issues facing not just our villages, not just our state, not just our nation, it's the world. Our children, everyone's children, is the environment. And we need to give that the full impact, the implications of that. So as we're considering cost effectiveness, please let's also keep in mind some things that may have cost us less may have a tremendous environmental cost. So please, I ask you, keep that in mind and weigh that strongly as we go forward with your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Jennifer Mizrahi, and I'm from the village of Pine Hills. And I just have one quick statement and then also a couple questions. So the one statement goes along with informing villagers. I think most villagers want to know what the right thing to do is. The gentleman previously touched on that. And I know for me, like sometimes I help my friends rent out their places. And when we rent out for like season, for 3 months during season and things like that, I think those people probably aren't very well informed on what's okay to put in the recycle because they're not getting that original pamphlet that we get when we buy our houses. So I kind of care about that a lot, and I give them the little pamphlet for the roundabouts so we don't have an accident in the roundabout, and also the recycle could be part of that. And on the village, on the district website, when I try to get those PDFs, either print out for them and put in their packet or to send to them via email, I have to go to all different parts of the website. So if there was like a new resident section that had a lot of the things new residents should have, like the link to the rec news so they don't have to pick it up, they can just click on it, the actual PDF, or the recycle, the roundabouts, which I think is really important. All those things, that might be really convenient and something to think about. And then the questions I have, in terms of the bins versus the bags, I was surprised to see the bag. So I wasn't even thinking of the bins in terms of having a dual, like paper and plastic. But has it ever been analyzed that you see more recycling done in general if you have bins versus plastic bags? Because we have to buy the plastic bags. If the bag's not full, we feel bad about putting it out because it's not full and we have the plastic bag, you know, I mean, do you have a comment on this?
I think your first comment about education answers the second question. It depends on education. Most people use bins. The villages uses bags, and it's part of the deeds, and that's the way it is.
To recycle them?
To recycle.
Do we recycle the bags?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that is, so that plastic should be recycled. I think the more important factor is the education. Because I can give you the best bin, but if you don't know what to do or you don't understand why to do it, it doesn't matter what you have. I haven't seen any good evidence one way or the other, but I would go back to your comment about education. That's, especially with rentals. I agree, rentals and hotels have always been a challenge in the industry.
Yeah, like when we have people from Europe, I think they're putting in things that they shouldn't be recycling, you know, and then I have the opposite problem maybe. But also,
It's called wish cycling.
yeah, exactly.
You put it in the bin and you wish somebody recycles it.
That's great. And if we could fit it on a little refrigerator magnet, that would be really awesome. Like a constant reference right on your refrigerator, like, can I put this thing in? Because I know from the villages, I receive like the customer service phone numbers and things like that on a magnet, and I use that all the time, you know, when I need to refer to it, instead of digging it out of a pile of information. The last thing was, I just had a question about, you said the yard waste becomes energy in some of those facilities. Can they do the same with newspaper? Can that just go in with yard waste because it's paper?
Yes.
Oh.
Well,
I'm not saying it should here necessarily. Maybe we can't do that in the villages, but theoretically.
where I live, they removed newspaper from the recycling bin, but we do have a waste energy facility. So I don't feel as bad because I know it's being burned and generating electricity.
Right.
I don't know about the villages. We'd have to look at whether or not the contract with, and if Lake County has the capacity.
So this is really a key issue, and I'm glad you touched on it. And that's basically the receiving end of that secondary product. So if you're thinking about recyclables and you're thinking about where they can possibly go, you may be aware that like in Lake County, in the Oklahoma area, there is a energy from waste plant as well as outside of Tampa and Fort Myers. So we need to look at that entirety of life cycle costs. We need to look at what that collection methodology is in costs. We need to look at the betterment of the environment and the impacts as mentioned earlier. And we need to look at transportation, the entire life cycle. One of the things that a planning effort like this does is it looks at all of those factors, not just financial, but also environmental. We also need to do that in view of our suburban environment. We are not, DC, we are not San Francisco, nor do we subscribe to be. We're the Villages, and the Villages has a very specific sort of set of rules that we live in. That needs to be considered as well. So, good points.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Mark Hesselden. I'm from Alhambra. Thank you for the presentation. I have just a couple questions and a comment. The first is, the glass is, I understand, is totally waste. It's wasted, and we shouldn't recycle it. Is that correct?
No. Glass doesn't have much value today, but recycling glass has tremendous environmental benefit. It takes, I think, 30% of the energy to make a new bottle from, let me take a step back. One of the challenges with recycling is the benefits of recycling aren't derived in the local community. You may recycle glass, but you don't necessarily see the direct benefit. If it's cheaper, yes, you do. If it's more expensive, you don't. The benefits to recycling glass are it takes less energy, it takes less raw material. We're not excavating sand, lime, etc. So there's environmental benefits and social benefits that are within the state, within the country, but the Villages doesn't recognize that. So that's always the trade-off with recycling programs is we make the effort locally, but the benefits realized nationally. Yes, glass has a low market value. If your only decision was pricing, maybe you don't want to recycle glass, if that's the only criteria. If you consider environmental and life cycle costs, true life cycle costs, carbon footprint, then glass is real high on the list.
All right. Just from a practical point of view, then, do you recycle glass in the villages, or is it thrown out in the waste dump?
It's recycled, yes.
It's
Glass
recycled.
is recycled, yes.
Then it has some value.
Oh, yes, it does have value, yes. But glass is recycled,
It
correct?
has the same. It has equal value to plastic. then.
Well, let's be clear. The district government, if through our recycling efforts, does recycle a number of things. and from an environmental benefit, there is value. But the district government, it's not the district, you all support that subsidy to recycle that. So when you say does it have value, it's a little bit of sort of a two-sided coin. Yes, it has environmental value, turn the point over, and you all, me and I live in the villages, support that subsidy to pay for that value of that product. It is not a net revenue product, if you will, if you look at it as you would look at cardboard, which just is kind of squeaking by every month. But those other recyclables, we are actually supporting, subsidizing that environmental value. And that may be very much the right thing to do. We may want to do more of that. We may want to do different sorts. There's all sorts of considerations. As district manager, my issue is that to make sure that we are addressing the current and the long-range needs of the community. And you can really only do that in a discussion, developing a plan for forward action with the community.
Okay, I don't know if I understand. I still don't quite understand it. If the glass is going to the MRF along with the plastic, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And it's being reused?
Some of it at a not a one-to-one rate. That's correct.
And what determines if it's going to be used or if it isn't going to be used?
Market forces, not the district.
I mean, what do they do with the glass that isn't used?
It's redirected to landfills.
It's put in the land. Okay, how about, just one other question. I've heard that coated cardboard is not recyclable. Corrugated cardboard is, correct? But anything like if you buy a coffee pot and it has a glossy cover over the cardboard, that is not recyclable, is that correct?
If it's printed on the cardboard, it is recyclable. If it is wrapped in a plastic shrink wrap, that's one of the challenges we have. The best thing you can do is peel the shrink wrap off and put the cardboard in. So it depends on the material itself. If it's printed, it's okay, but if it's a shrink wrap, the shrink wrap may not be. So yes.
I guess this comes down to the statement from the two previous people up here. Education, I have no idea, and I don't think I'm alone, on what is recyclable and what isn't. For example, if you have a peanut butter jar, okay, and you use most of it, 99% of it, is that recyclable or isn't it? Probably not, because it takes too much water to clean it up and make it uncontaminated, correct?
And the types of plastics that are recyclable are listed on the website. But regardless of, so let me go back. When you look at recyclables, many of those came from communities that actually preach washing, cleaning out your recyclables before putting them in the bin up north here in your bag. In Virginia, where I worked 15 years and ran a huge recycling program as part of a Public Works Administration department, there was an award given every year for the clean recyclables of communities. They would come out and they would actually judge it. Alexandria routinely won it, and our mayor and vice mayor were wild, and they were very proud of that, and I was happy they were proud of it. But the bigger issue is, for me, was that the contamination factor that we discussed in the presentation was kept at a much lower level from those recyclables in the secondary market coming from Alexandria, making our recyclables more marketable. So.
Okay, and I'll just wrap up. Thank you for that. Thank you for the answers. I just noticed, though, it's all on and I don't really know how I feel about this, okay? But it is on the consumer to recycle. But we don't seem to be putting any pressure on people that are manufacturing this stuff that we have to recycle. For example, the bottled water is unbelievable. I mean, the number of people that get bottled water when you can just get it out of your tap is, it's unbelievable.
And so that's an excellent point. So the district government, we need to be really clear on what we have control over. So unlike a county or a state that would have manufacturing within, the district government does not have control over the commercial businesses nor the manufacturing. Your statement, I think, rings true from both environmental and on a whole host of sort of energy consumption and staff or resource issues. but we don't have control of that. That would be a statewide initiative. Now, you probably have seen, there's all sort of plastic bottle initiatives, plastic bags was mentioned, straws, all sort of initiatives. The district government will be addressing the residential stream, because that's what we have control of.
Okay, yeah, so that is the state. Is there anybody thinking along those lines as far as regulation or?
Yes, yeah. First of all, very good question. You're right on point here. This is exactly what we're struggling with. Your questions are right on point. What's recyclable and what's that boundary? How much water do you spend washing that peanut butter jar? The state has introduced legislation to deal with contamination, and it was recently vetoed by the governor because there were some other things added to it. So there is legislation ongoing to try to reduce that contamination, help jurisdictions manage that recycling stream. The concept of how materials are generated is extended producer responsibility, EPR. So the producer of the material has a extended responsibility through the life cycle. And that's happening on electronics. In some states, in Pennsylvania where I live, the retailer or the manufacturers are responsible for buying back the same number of products that they put into the market. So if they sell 1 million TVs, they have to bring 1 million TVs back into the recycling market. So we're beginning to see the concept of EPR, extended producer responsibility, be implemented. So, yes.
Thank you very much. Just one last thing. I'm not taking too much time, but one last thing. And I don't know how I feel about this, okay? But as a consumer, like my neighbor, he lives by himself as I do, but he has a little bag out there every garbage pickup, and it's almost like a shoebox size, okay? And then I have a bigger bag, okay? And I waste too much, I do, especially food. So maybe I should be paying more than my neighbor. Now, I know that's hard to figure out, but maybe with the new technology with maybe UPC stamps.
Yeah, the concept is called pay as you throw. Okay. So if I have, and there's quite a few jurisdictions that have enacted that, where, I'm getting feedback, I'm sorry, where they've enacted that you have different size bins, you can have different size bags, and you pay a different amount based on the amount you throw away. So if you're paying $17 a month, you get a 33-gallon bin, and you can fill that. But if you have a family of 5, you get a 64-gallon big bin, and you pay $30 a month. So that is something that has been enacted both nationally as well as here in Florida, quite a bit.
For what you're doing, I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to get involved, but also I have one question with a follow-on. My name is Joe Finch. I live in the village of Hillsborough, and what I'm talking about is innovative technologies. Who on the board represents innovative technologies?
Put your microphone up. There you go.
Am I not being heard back there? Y'all don't care anyway. Who's looking at innovative technologies? As an example, Trex. Most folks are aware of what Trex is. Does anybody not know what Trex is? They take 80% recycled plastics and they make hard wood boards that you can use for your decks and stuff like that. Up north, it's a good thing, and they were competitive with wood that had all those chemicals in it. Anyway, carpeting is another technology where the innovation was the guy washes the carpeting from industrial buildings, pulls all the carpeting out of these buildings, washes that and recycles that into new carpeting. Made billions on this. Anyway, who's looking at the innovative technologies for us?
So the reason that we brought a staff consultant in was because from a global perspective, Mr. Wood actually has that access to resources within Jacobs. Jacobs is how many tens of thousands of staff people? 70,000 people nationwide and in other countries as well. And having them as a resource to be able to support a recycling effort not only gives them knowledge that I would have that is industry-wide, but it gives us cutting-edge knowledge. Now, some of the things you mentioned, the district government would not have control over. We would have control over not picking up some of those items. Then we discuss about what the alternate methods of collection would be. But the manufacturing, the EPR that was discussed, we don't have control over that.
How are we getting the universities involved? How are we involving universities in looking at these issues?
So why don't you answer that? I'll follow up with.
Couple items. You mentioned the carpet. Interface is the carpet. And basically what you do is you rent carpet. So they provide carpeting for this building, say, and you basically rent it, and after 3 years or 5 years, they come back in, take it all out, take it back to their shop, and clean it, reprocess it, refurbish it. So we're beginning to see that occurring. Like Mr. Bear was starting to say, that sort of gets back to the producer side of it. With the universities, we do work with a couple of the local universities. UCF, Debbie Reinhardt's one of the professors there. We know Debbie, we know Tim Townsend, Dr. Tim Townsend, who's up at University of Gainesville. They both do a lot of research in solid waste, and we've worked with them on other projects. So you have the universities. You also have a lot of the technology is coming from Europe because they've invested. Remember I was talking about the landfill tax? They've invested in the technology. So when you start to look at waste energy or composting, a lot of those technologies are based or originated in Europe. Now, when you move to the US, you have a slightly different waste stream in some cases. For example, composting. One of the first yard waste composting facilities that was built in the state was built West Palm Beach, Florida, West Palm Beach Solid Waste Authority. They had two major problems. It was a European technology. One was sand, and the second was palm fronds. So we have lots of them, and when you go to shred them, you have to shred them as you put them through the compost facility. They would wrap around the shredder. It's like shredding rope. So there are technologies. We just don't want to be the first one. But
It's a set example in a lot of other areas.
oh yeah, yep. And this is one where we can, and this is one where we can, and I'm sure Mr. Bear will say this is one that we can, where we control with what we can control. So maybe we look at technologies as it relates to collection. Maybe we look at technology as it relates to education.
Well, and we'll look at technologies as it relates to the district areas, our facility like this. We control, we own this facility and the other buildings that are serving the residents. So this plan will set out standards for environmental protection as well, because by implication, we can change policies by which we contractually enter into agreements with other parties to refurbish, renovate buildings. And some of the things that we're doing, we can discuss, not today, but at a different time, relating to our sort of movement in an environmentally more friendly way.
This is a comment, just a comment. The high school here has got some really, really bright kids in it. And once you tap that force and say, look, here's something we really need somebody to research, those kids will produce the kind of information we need.
Chris Bradshaw, District 10 Supervisor. I also live in Osceola Hills, Soaring Eagle. My question is about the medications, because very few people know when those collection drop off, and we don't want those in the landfill, we don't want those in the sewer system. So could there be more transparency about when those occur and if necessary, more often?
So we can certainly work with law enforcement who provide those collection points. City of Wildwood has a pretty good program for a smaller jurisdiction, and also Sumter County. So we can always do a better job in getting that public out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Rinaldi, Pine House. I'd like to say thank you for the presentation. It's excellent. Mr. Bear, I'd like to thank you and your staff. We had a garbage, didn't get picked up, and called your office. Within 3 hours, this was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, your crew got a hold of the pickup people. There was a mistake. It was 100 degrees, kind of worried about, rodents and things like that. So I'd like to thank you and your staff for doing a great job. And I appreciate it.
Thank you.
The other comment I'd just like to say is basically the hidden cost. Consider hidden cost. If you pick up garbage once a week, I'll call it garbage, solid waste, sorry. If you do that, then that may draw out rodents. So now I'm paying maybe somebody to come in and take care of that. So when you think process goes through it all, I'd rather pay more, and I know it sounds crazy, but I'd rather pay more to get it done right, so that there's no hidden costs, no hidden taxes, no hidden taxes and things like that. So if you could consider that in your plans, I would appreciate it. And thank you.
And that was an unpaid advertising. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pam Trefane. I live in Antrim Dells. It's been touched on a number of times. I really would like to see more education. I just went and looked at the District Gov site. It has one small little ad there on what is recycled. What it doesn't cover is what is not recycled. I see a lot of wish cycling when I go out on my walks. We've had other talks done by the MRF from Tampa on not plastic bags, not shredded paper, and things like that. Most people, especially if they're coming from someplace else, they know what the regulations were there, but they don't know what is here. Also, one, is there an education program that might be coming out? I heard the newspaper or whatever, so that we can get better information. And two, concerning the glass recycling, because I have seen articles that I know different counties in the area have stopped glass recycling. Are we in the villages, or at least in Sumter County, continuing all glass?
So the recycling that's listed on the website does include glass, and that recycling will continue. If you're talking about other counties out, like Antrim Dells is in Sumter County, I can't speak to what Marion County residents are doing, or Lake County. That may have changed recently, but they have listed on their website. And this is very important to us, because as the size of the district and the complexity of recycling, which gives the reason why we're having the presentation today in solid waste management, continues to sort of to morph out in a very, very different way. It makes more important the educational aspect the district government does for its residents. It also places a lot of onus on the district government to frequently have that touchstone and not just rely on resident academy or district bulletin, because we do have a large turnover as well of our residents. So they're good points, but so just so there's no confusion, there has been no change to what has been recycled. What you read in other counties is that governmental jurisdiction's effort for recycling, not the district's.
Bill Ray from District 3, Village of Polo Ridge. They were talking about rodents and garbage. Just a comment. One of my daughters lives in Sierra Madre, California. If you don't have your garbage sealed properly in the right kind of controlled container, the bears come out of the house like crazy and tear that all apart. So I guess we're lucky in that regard. It's unfortunate we can't use bins, because every garbage bag is more plastic. And I don't think that's an aesthetics issue when it's all said and done. So unfortunately that can't be pursued. But in regards to that, also one of the things that you see in other places is if you go into certain stores, and maybe governmental, they actually charge you for a plastic bag. Now, I'm not saying we pursue that, but one of the things I think from an educational point of view you might want to do is talk about bringing your own bags to the store. Well, I understand a number of people do, but you take a look at the number of plastic bags that come out of these stores, it's stunning. It's a massive, massive number. And the more we can perhaps educate people on the impact of plastics and bring your own bags, it might be beneficial.
My name Jane Menard. I'm from Polar Ridge also. I have a couple questions for you. What can the people in this room do to help you? Do you have a list of volunteers? Do you have a list of tasks that are overwhelming that many of us might be able to assist you? I've heard glass talked about a lot, but there are companies in Norway that make an incredible glass crushing machine that they put in bars so that all the glass bottles are turned into a tablespoon of sand. And there's one actually that has come and is in the Midwest as we talk right now, that go into individual facilities. You could envision something put in the Brownwood and Lake Sumter area where no glass bottles come out of any of those areas. Or to have some type of place where we take our glass and you just put the bottle in. I thought it ingenious that some of these bars now are putting them in their facilities, that they just take one bottle at a time, and the purchase of bottles has actually gone up because people want to put their bottle in and watch it smashed. And have this little machine comes out, it takes off the paper, and there's this much. And then it goes into a bag. The sandbags are now sold, which is a product that comes out of the glass. So when you think of, oh, we have to put it in, it takes thousands of years for a glass bottle to dissolve in a landfill. And in this case, it can be immediately smashed and recycled and sold. Now, I know that sand is cheap. It's only $10 a ton from what I understand. However, sand companies are sometimes taking from beaches, they're taking sand from our forests and other areas, and now all of a sudden, if glass was really recycled, we would be saving all this, a whole different technology. So there are innovative things that are out there, and if we just knew how to help you do some of your data collection, how to help you do a little of your research, how to put something forth from the community, because when you leave here and you go back to wherever you are, you're going to get right back into your cycle doing how you do it. The people that are all here are going to put tons of effort into it. But the resources sitting in this room have to be tapped on. And I think there's a lot of us who are interested in all the things that people have presented here. So if you could just tell us how we could get on a volunteer list or help you in any way, I think we'd be happy to.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else now? Okay, so we're going to shut that down. We're going to go back to our agenda. And the next item on our agenda is the district manager report.
So, Mr. Chairman, board members, members of the public, the only thing that I wanted to go over just was a reminder that on July 9th, our latest fire station will be opening up down on South Morris Boulevard on County Road 468. That'll be at 11 o'clock. That fire station combines the fire VPSD efforts with also a satellite facility for customer service. At that satellite facility for anyone in the village's district government system, specifically targeting our districts 12, 10, 11, those more southern districts, 9. At the satellite office for customer service, you'll be able to get your gate cards. If there's a gate card problem, your IDs, pay your utility bills, have utility bill questions answered, also handling your payoff or bond questions, and a number of other community watch services that are offered. This will be the first of initiative from an environmental perspective, limiting the amount of driving back and forth that people have, limiting the amount of driving that staff has, and if you will, that deadhead time going from the Lake Sumter landing offices, and recognizing that as the villages grows, we need to change our model, much as we talked about here with regard to recycling and solid waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item would be, we're going to skip over the district council report. He's not here today, and move to the supervisor comments. Any comments from the supervisor? Hearing none, we'll move on to audience comments. Any comments that you would like to make to the board? All been made? Okay. Then we'll move to adjourn.